Hey there, internets. This week we got a ton of new Warframe news thanks to TennoCon 2024, the return of Splitgate 2, Concord failing spectacularly, and some beefy Helldivers news, as well as quite a bit more than I anticipated this week. Before we start though, I hope you don't mind if I plug my most recent upload, Everything We Know About Space Marines 2. It's doing exceptionally better than my other uploads, so thank you guys so much for that. And if you haven't checked it out and are so inclined, please be my guest. But let's jump right into our headline story. The FTC and Microsoft are bickering like a pair of angry school kids, playing he said, she said. A couple of weeks ago, we covered Microsoft's price increases to Game Pass. Link above and below if you want to check those details. And in this week, the Federal Trade Commission has filed a letter with the U.S. Court of Appeals complaining about the increases. In the letter, they say Microsoft's actions are inconsistent with previous price increase plans, and this Game Pass change is exactly the sort of consumer harm from the merger the FTC had alleged, while also calling the charges product degradation. And despite what you may think about the FTC or Microsoft, yeah, these changes are absolutely product degradation. It's not rocket science. The previous Xbox Game Pass for consoles was $11 and included day one games. Going forward, the new Xbox Game Pass standard is $15 and includes no day one games. In other words, your previous Game Pass subscription is now degraded and not as good as it used to be, and it's also more expensive. Also, bear in mind, if you do want to keep your day one games, then you're not just upgrading from $11 a month to $15. No, you're almost doubling what you used to pay by having to upgrade from $11 to $20 to get almost the same exact service you already had. This may come as a surprise, but guess what? Microsoft disagrees with that assessment because it is wrong to call this a degraded version of the discontinued Game Pass for console offering. That discontinued product did not offer multiplayer functionality, which had to be purchased separately for an additional $9.99 a month, making the total cost $20.98 per month. It gets even more childish when near the end of Microsoft's rebuttal letter, they pull out the whataboutism, saying, "But even in the alleged subscription market, Call of Duty is not being withheld from anyone who wants it, and there remains no evidence anywhere of harm to competition. Sony's subscription service continues to thrive even as they put new games into their subscription day and date, unlike Microsoft. You see, Judge, Sony is doing it, so I can do it too, and by the way, they're worse." One thing I found interesting, if you take a listen to the Jeff Gerstrom show, he pointed out that these sorts of price hikes are planned months in advance, meaning it is likely Microsoft were already planning the increase as the FTC lawsuit was going on during the purchase of Activision Blizzard. And yeah, that would track. By the way, Jeff Gerstmann is a longtime games journalist who has previous experience working at GameSpot and was the co-founder of Giant Bomb, so yeah, dude's been around the block. Who knows if anything will come of this, but one thing's certain, Microsoft lawyers are a fair sight better than the FTC's, and that's a little scary, hey? That's not the only Game Pass news we got this week either, as Windows Central is reporting that Microsoft is considering adding even more tiers to the service. According to Windows Central sources, the new tiers may include a cloud-only subscription, an ad-supported tier, and possibly a family subscription option may return to the lineup. And while this is only hearsay at this point, it definitely tracks with Microsoft's overall strategy recently. After making games available to stream on the Fire Stick, a cloud-only tier would make perfect sense. Ditto to the ad-supported tier, and to be frank, it's nuts that they haven't reintroduced the family plan at this point. And to take the cloud tier even further, we do know that this week Microsoft integrated NVIDIA's GeForce Now service into the Xbox Store pages. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if we see one or all three of these new tiers in the coming weeks. It seems Game Pass is poised to continue growing, but the only question is, will it grow enough to offset the risks and money involved in this strategy? We'll all just have to wait and see. Microsoft wasn't done making headlines this week either, as Bethesda Game Studio has revealed a major breakthrough for its workers, announcing that it's become the first wall-to-wall union under the Microsoft Game Studios umbrella, with 241 staff across developers, artists, engineers, and more joining the Communication Workers of America union. Of course, this comes on the heels of Bethesda's Montreal unionization last month, and ZeniMax seeing close to 300 QA workers unionized back in late 2022, early 2023. Obviously, this is fantastic news for the workers and hopefully a big step for the industry as a whole, because let's be honest, the industry sure as hell isn't going to suddenly start treating its developers correctly of their own accord. That much has been made crystal clear. But I think that's enough of Microsoft. Let's take a look at some of the big announcements that happened this week. 1047 Games showed off a cinematic announcement trailer for Splitgate 2, the follow-up to their sleeper 2021 arena shooter hit. And while I'm excited to see what's next, I'm also a bit confused. The first Splitgate got its success firstly for being a mix of Halo with an interesting portal mechanic in an arena shooter's clothes. The sequel, however, is a kind of class-based hero shooter with the most carbon copy modern shooter aesthetic I've seen in a while? Well, okay, Concord exists, but still. I'm not dunking on it by any means. Its arena shooter roots seem to have stuck around, and the trailer is fun, but cinematic trailers are always kind of pointless for non-story-based games. Even weirder, there's a companion app that's available and advertises comics, collectible cards, and more. I have no idea what to think about Splitgate 2, and I mean that genuinely. I guess we'll have to wait until sometime next year when the game comes out for PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and the Xbox Series X and S. And if you'll permit me to rant for half a second, developers, all developers, indies, AA's, AAA's, please, for the love of God, stop announcing your games with cinematic trailers, especially if your game isn't story-focused. All it does is tell your audience that A, you either don't have enough of a game to even show off, in which case, why the hell are you announcing it, or B, you're not confident in your own game enough to show it. Just stop it, please. Unfortunately, I don't have much advice, not that they asked, for our next game, and that is Concord. Man, Concord really can't catch a break, can it? The first beta weekend saw pretty dismal numbers for PC players, just barely over 1,000, and while the open beta's numbers were definitely better, having around 2,400 peak is still not good. It's possible that the PlayStation beta numbers were considerably better, but they'd have to be exponentially better to compensate for the lack of interest on PC. So why does a game designed by vets who have experience working on games like Call of Duty and Destiny have so little interest? Well, the mundane answers are pretty easy. The combat's good, but not good enough, with players often referring to it as floaty, which is almost never a good descriptor for your combat. Secondly, gamers seem to be less than enthusiastic about the game's heroes. Again, a bad sign for a hero shooter. And lastly, it's $40 up front for a live service game that has had an unfortunate reputation since it was revealed. But even more than all those reasons, and I'm not seeing enough people talk about this, the game requires a PSN account for PC players. And yeah, we all saw the outrage when they tried that stunt with Helldivers a few months back, but when Sony walked back that requirement, everyone celebrated prematurely, not realizing the game is still not purchasable in close to 200 countries. And guess what? Yep, Concord is in the same situation, not even available to buy in 2/3 of the planet. So is it really that surprising that the Concord betas have failed spectacularly on PC? Not really. Regardless, low player counts in betas does not a failed game make. Still, it is rather foreshadowing, isn't it? In the total opposite of Concord, Helldivers 2 launched earlier this year to wild success. That is, until Sony pulled the plug. Yes, I'm still bitter, but anyway. Action on the Helldivers 2 front has been a little quiet the past few weeks, but Arrowhead have stepped up this week to change that with the announcement of the Escalation of Freedom update. Reported as the biggest update yet for the game, my favorite addition isn't even the new content. No, starting with this new update, grief kicking will finally be addressed. For those unfamiliar, some of the community's less democratic members have been kicking players from the map at the end of the mission, thus depriving them of all their loot and upgrade samples. But once the new patch lands, anyone who gets kicked will spawn back on the ship with all the loot the squad had acquired, thus ensuring no Helldiver is left without a reward for their hard work. And while that's no doubt fantastic, the content additions are pretty great too. First up, a new level 10 Super Helldive difficulty is being implemented that the developers are promising will come with great challenges and rewards, including a new super sample to collect, as well as new enemy types, bigger outposts for both bots and bugs, environmental hazards, and thankfully more mission variation. So, Helldivers who may have been feeling a little bit of the boredom kick in, you can dive back into the fray this August 6th when the new patch drops. Hey everyone, we got some quick breaking news after I wrapped up recording this week. First and foremost, Humble Bundle is in chaos after employees took to LinkedIn reporting that the company had laid off everyone and closed down without warning. Business Development Manager Nicola Kwan claimed that the entire 36 employees of Humble Games was let go and the company was shutting down. Likewise, Senior QA Manager Emily Kiefer said that July 23rd was their last day at Humble Games. Humble responded quickly, stating, "In these challenging economic times for indie games publishing, Humble Games has made the difficult but necessary decision to restructure our operations. The decision was not made lightly. It involved much deliberation and careful thought with the goal of ensuring the stability and support of our developers' ongoing projects. Additionally, the restructuring of operations at Humble Games will have no impact on operations at Humble Bundle." However, this story is moving fast, and not too long after Humble's response, Chris Radley, a former creative lead at Humble, said, "I want it to be made abundantly clear this is not a restructuring of operations. This is a total shutdown of Humble Games. Operations have been handed off to a third-party consultancy. No staff are left." And things got even more chaotic when Aftermath obtained a recording of the all-hands meeting where the Humble Games employees were informed of the layoffs. In the meeting, Steve Horowitz, president of Humble's parent company Ziff Davis, laid out the reasons for the layoffs before dropping the final acts. As a result, he explained, employees are being let go and remaining projects will be carried over the finish line by a third-party company called the Powell Group. Given all this, we've made a very tough but necessary decision to restructure all of Humble Games with the goal of providing the best cost-effective way to make sure that the games see the market, our existing slate sees market, and supporting the developers that are associated with it. As such, we're going to be using a third party to help us manage the slate moving forward, as well as the back catalog. As a result, all roles within Humble Games are going to be impacted. A spokesperson for Humble Games told Aftermath that this is a restructuring, not a closure, mirroring Humble Games' statement on the matter on Twitter. However, considering that all employees are being laid off and a third-party company is taking over their duties, what remains will be Humble Games in name only. So obviously, Ziff Davis are playing a game of semantics here, as the suits just love to do. Steve Horowitz can technically get away with saying Humble Games isn't being closed if the company still technically exists, but we all see what's going on here. The name may exist, but if it's being handed off to a third party, then it is functionally dead and replaced by said third party. I've been a supporter for Humble Bundle for 6 years now. This morning, after I researched and figured out what was going on with the situation, I deactivated and canceled my account. And it's such a shame. Let's wish all the devs the best and hope that they land on their feet in a better environment. In some more not so great news, Nintendo has voided Team Jackpot's recent Splatoon 3 World Championship win after team members violated its community policy. I'm not in on this scene, but according to VGC, a recent spat of racist language and jokes were frequently used by members of Team Jackpot, likely leading to this move by Nintendo. Anyway, I don't want to belabor this disheartening news break any longer than I have to, so back to your regularly scheduled Leebs. TennoCon 2024 happened this week, and there is a lot to talk about for Warframe fans, as Digital Extremes not only gave us a big look into Warframe 1999, but also their new game, Soulframe. Let's start with the stranger of the two, Warframe 1999. Originally showed off at 2023's TennoCon, this year we got an extended look at the expansion, and it's going to be a wild ride. Warframe 1999 has an in-game canon boy band, complete with an actual soundtrack that will be released on Spotify and Apple Music next week. Also, it's called Warframe 1999 because the game takes place in an alternate history Earth in 1999. 1999's new hub is set in an abandoned 90s shopping mall, because of course it is, where the game's newest syndicate, the Hex, reside. The 6 members of the Hex are the Warframes Excalibur, Volt, Mag, Trinity, and Nyx. Except they're not those Warframes. They're actually Arthur Nightingale, Amir Beckett, Aoi Morohoshi, I hope I pronounced that right, Leticia Garcia, and Eleanor Nightingale, Arthur's sister. There is also a new Warframe, Site 09, whose human counterpart is Quincy Isaacs. If you're wondering why there are humans in your Warframes, or if you're not a Warframe player and you're confused as to why people are confused there are humans in their Warframes, the answer to both of you is yes. The long and short of it for both confused parties is, yes, those are humans in the Warframe suits, or you can call them proto-frames. No, they are not the original Warframes, which are not human, or well, not really, but that's getting into the weeds of Warframe lore, which I think we'll steer clear of right now. 1999 takes place in Warframe's distant past and hopes to tell a story that will fill in some lore gaps and give us some totally new information about the game's history. A cool idea in and of itself, but Digital Extremes just said, fuck it, hold my beer, and went full in on the 90s aesthetic and theme. As an example of this, you can romance any of the proto-frames. Yes, Warframe now will have a romance option in 1999. And just how do you flirt with your killing machine crush? Well, it's 1999 after all. Send them an instant message using Kinematic Instant Messenger. Aside from a wild story, 1999 will add the Atomicycle, a badass-looking new mount you can use in the open zones, Skaldra, the new enemy faction, a new addition to the adversary system in the Technosite Coda, and Site 9, the newest Warframe. Also, this abbreviated list doesn't do justice to the wackiness of this expansion, and I love it. Gamers are constantly asking developers to do something different, and Digital Extremes have delivered something different, alright. Speaking of doing something different, Digital Extremes CEO Steve Sinclair, in an interview over at VGC this week, discussed the recent trend in failing live service games, saying, they think the release is make or break, and it's not. They have a financial way to be persistent, and they never do it. It comes out, doesn't work, and they throw it away. Isn't that a shame when you put so many years of your life into iterating on those systems or building technology or building the start of a community, and because the operating costs are high, you get terrified when you see the numbers drop and then you leave? We've seen this with amazing releases that I think have massive potential, and I think they eject too soon. And yeah, of course he's right. In any case, I don't want to get sidetracked with industry ranting. That's way too easy to do and I can do it for days. No release date for Warframe 1999 outside of sometime this year, but if you've never played the game, but maybe you're enjoying the first Descendant, I'd encourage you to give Warframe a look. There is a lot of content in this game to check out, and even more on the way, obviously. The convention also showed off Soulframe, the company's newest outing, and well, it's pretty rough looking. Not that it necessarily looks bad, it just looks a little janky and undercooked, but the plan is to open up the game to more players by this fall, though no official release date for the game has been set. The core of Soulframe has you playing as the Envoy, who is on a quest to heal the soul of the world and its denizens after a technologically advanced force has swept through, wreaking havoc. Early on, players will unlock the Fey Arm, which allows them to gain the power of creatures within the world, and this seems to act as a kind of class system. Although the game is called Soulframe, and let's be honest, it looks like it plays pretty similar to a Souls game, the team has said it is designed to be a more approachable Souls-like, with creative director Jeff Crooks saying, "We do not want to compete with people that are making some of the best games ever made and what they do. I would say we very much lean into the sister aspect of it being a sister project to Warframe. I think people that know Warframe would have an expectation maybe of what Soulframe might bring. There is a lot of shared things that carry over with the free-to-play action RPG setting, but we very much want it to be the counterbalance to what Warframe is. We definitely don't want this to be as hardcore as Warframe is at first impression, and we don't want it to be a punishing game either. So, Soulframe isn't exactly a Souls-like, but kind of, and it's not exactly Warframe, but kind of. I don't know, this sounds like a recipe for trouble. If you market it as kind of a Souls game, then hardcore Souls fans probably won't be interested in the approachability, while fans that disliked Souls games won't be interested to begin with. And if you market it as kind of a Warframe game, then you're gonna get Warframe fans who are disappointed at the slowness and lack of complexity. Don't get me wrong, these are issues that can totally be overcome, of course, but at the moment, Digital Extremes definitely has some work to do, not only on the game itself, but also on its public-facing image. If you are interested, however, check out the nearly 20-minute demo they revealed at the convention. It definitely looks appealing, and I like some of the ideas, so here's to hoping that they pull it all together in a complete and compelling package whenever it is finally released. Once Human announced an update coming soon that will add a new PvP scenario between the Mayflies and Rosetta, as well as a new PvE scenario with the Northern Mountain region, challenges, and monsters. The update announcement comes after the July 18th patch wiped out a number of player items and bases. Naturally, players were more than a little miffed at having their hard work disemboweled, as one player put it. Starry Studios said they have found the problem and are working to rectify it. Fortunately, if you did lose items, it should be returned to you through the in-game mail as well as some form of compensation for the problem. Likewise, players with housing loss will also have their stuff returned and some compensation. Next up, Valhalla developer Sukaban Games unleashed some pure PlayStation 1 era nostalgia this week, showing off a trailer for their next game, 45 Parabellum Bloodhound. Described playfully as an active time action game, fans of Parasite Eve or even Vagrant Story will instantly recognize the combat style. The game features a tightly designed battle system suitable for both hardcore and vibes-based players alike. That's a tricky balance to pull off, hopefully they manage it. You'll explore 7 stages, each with their own hand-placed encounters, dialogues, and riddles, all while unraveling the tale of Rayla, a killing machine emerging from depression looking to rebuild her life doing what she knows best. No release dates yet on this one, and I'd expect a bit of a wait, maybe sometime next year, but you can be assured I'll be following this one with great interests. The Plucky Spire from Devolver Digital and developer All Possible Futures put out a new sneak peek, once again showing off some 2D to 3D charm. If you haven't heard of this one, it was first announced a couple years back, having been in development since around 2020. In The Plucky Squire, you play as Jot, a storybook character who discovers that there happens to be a fully 3D world outside of their pages. Once the book's villain catches on, he kicks the heroes out of the pages, keeping them from being able to prevent his rise to power. Jot will be jumping between 2D and 3D realms, solving puzzles, fighting off enemies, and apparently even flying around. Still no concrete release date outside of sometime this year, but when it comes out, you can play it on PC, PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and the Nintendo Switch. Devolver Digital wasn't done this week either, as developer Skeleton Crew put out a trailer for Force Strike, a roguelike tactical kung fu fighter, and I can see this really scratching an itch for some gamers. As the name suggests, in Force Strike, you have the ability to foresee combat encounters, plan and test them, and then execute. Players take control of you, a martial artist on a journey to free the Emperor from an evil admiral. You'll be upgrading and customizing your moves and techniques with multiple weapons and masters to choose and learn from. As a roguelite, each run will be somewhat unique, and since each encounter is something of a puzzle to solve, I can 100% see this being a very addictive loop if done well. It's not going to be available until sometime next year, but if you're into it, you'll be able to play it on the PC and the Switch. Moving along, we got an extended look at A Quiet Place: The Road Ahead this week, and Stormmind Games is heavily leaning into the Alien Isolation vibe, and that's not a criticism. While the extended look is a bit on the slow side, not really showing much of note aside from a couple monster encounters, we do get a mini preview of what's to come. In The Road Ahead, instead of a motion tracker, you'll be using a sound monitoring device to help you keep tabs on the creatures hoping to eat your face. While you navigate the world slowly and quietly, you'll be looting items, monitoring your flashlight's battery levels, avoiding the monsters, and seeking out inhalers to keep an asthma condition from causing you problems. Yeah, having a coughing fit in a situation like that would definitely be bad. I'm curious to see how Stormmind Games handles the development of this game. Alien Isolation has had such an endearing legacy, not because of how solid of an experience it is a solid experience, but because of how iconic the visuals and story of the franchise have become. To whereas A Quiet Place is a relatively new IP with a much more grounded in reality visual style. So while there are definitely some hurdles the devs need to overcome if they hope to have the same kind of impact, I am hoping they can lock it down and provide us with another great and intense horror experience. We also got some new gameplay footage of AI Limit, Sense Game's anime-inspired Souls-like. Visually, the game looks pretty alright with its cel-shaded post-apocalyptic aesthetic, and judging from the gameplay, it looks about as formulaic as can be, though that's not necessarily a bad thing. Obviously, the closest comparison to this is Code Vein, though I will admit Code Vein's flashier combat does look a little bit more appealing. That said, if you happen to be a fan of Souls-likes, particularly if you're a fan of the more traditional combat styles in the genre, as well as being an anime fan too, then this will probably appeal to you a lot. Myself, I'm gonna wait until we know a little bit more. AI Limit doesn't look bad by any means, but given just how many Souls-likes are out there to play these days, I'm not sure if AI Limit has shown off enough to stand out just yet, but there's still plenty of time. And it looks as if we won't have to wait too much longer, with Steam currently showing a 2024 release date, though no details have been revealed. When it does land, it'll be on PC and PlayStation 5. And let's round things out with a couple of delays announced this week. The Precinct from Fallen Tree Games announced a delay that shifted its release date from August to sometime in the fall. No doubt fans of the Sandbox Police game will be bummed, but I'm sure we're all tired of busted games on release. In The Precinct, you play as Officer Nick Cordell Jr., a rookie cop in the city of Averno. Combining a police sim with a 1980s noir aesthetic, if you ever wanted to play Lethal Weapon the game, this is your chance, unless of course you still own the actual Lethal Weapon game. Whenever this one does come out, you'll be able to play it on the PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X and S. And lastly, Larian announced a small delay to their patch 7 release for Baldur's Gate 3 this week, citing the age-old fix 1 bug, make 23 more problem that all developers face. In this case, it seems they accidentally broke the passive dice roll system. So yeah, that's a bit of a problem. Considering the patch is adding split-screen tweaks, mod support, over 1,000 fixes and changes, new evil ending cinematics, custom mode playthrough, honor mode mechanics, and plenty more, yeah, considering all that, I'd say a brief delay is just fine. In any case, the update is still coming out sometime this September, so not much longer now. But let's take a look at what actually was released this week. Developer Sandlot are dropping Earth Defense Force 6 this week, and if you're a fan of the series, you'll be pleased to know that it's still a goofy B-movie mess of a game. And if you don't know anything about Earth Defense Force, well, it's Helldivers 2 before there was a Helldivers 2? Sort of, well, not really, but sort of. As always, there is a story, but who is really paying attention to it? If you're playing an EDF game, then all you want to do is jump in to some low poly maps and destroy giant bad guys. If you haven't played EDF and this looks fun, it definitely is. It's fun in the same way that a cheesy summer movie blockbuster is mindless amusement. Or at least the previous games were. Obviously, we won't know if Earth Defense Force 6 scratches that same itch until it launches this week, July 25th for PC, PS4, and PS5. Also, imagine my surprise when Takanashi Kiara, Gargura, and Irish from Hololive showed up as pre-order bonuses. Apparently, you'll get a decoy version of the trio if you grab the game early. The VTubers are taking over, God help us. Next up, we've got Conscript, a top-down pixel art survival horror game inspired by the classics, says the Steam page. Set during World War I, you play as a French soldier searching for his brother during the Battle of Verdun. Rather than depending on supernatural elements to fuel the survival horror suspense, Conscript leans into its war-torn narrative to keep players on edge. In Conscript, you'll use a variety of World War I weaponry to contend with enemy soldiers and others out to kill you, while surviving in an oppressive and dangerous landscape ravaged by the war. And if you're able to watch these trailers in full without actually becoming a little depressed, props to you. If you're interested in the more grounded take on the genre, you can check it out now on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and the Nintendo Switch. Let's shift gears dramatically now. Developer Furniture and Mattress released their first outing this week with Arranger, a self-styled role puzzling adventurer. In Arranger, you play as Gemma, who is looking to find her place in the world, which apparently means rearranging everything on an interconnected grid until the puzzle pieces fall into place. Every move you make shifts the environment around, creating maze-like puzzles at every turn that look to give a continual hit of dopamine each time you progress. Personally, my brain is far too smooth for this kind of game, but if you're more inclined, then you can check it out this Thursday, July 25th for the PC, PS5, and Nintendo Switch. That said, I did enjoy Behind the Frame from developer Silver Lining Studio, and if you're looking for another puzzle game, then check out The Star Named EOS, their next game, which should already be live. Like Behind the Frame, The Star Named EOS is a story-rich puzzler that's built around imagery, in this case photography. You play as Day, who is walking in his mother's footsteps, hoping to find the truth of her absence by recreating the many photographs he received from her during her travels. If this is anything like Behind the Frame, you can expect a gorgeous art style and great story, and while the puzzles in Behind the Frame were so-so, I would expect Silver Lining Studio have iterated and improved with The Star Named EOS. If you've already taken a look at it, let me know down below. The game is out now on PC, PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and the Switch. The Operator from developer Bureau 81 released this week to very positive reviews over on Steam. As the FDI's newest operator, it's your job to assist field agents using your computer to examine data, solve puzzles, and uncover the truth behind the game's narrative. If you're into puzzle games, this one looks to be a pretty good brain tickle, if a bit on the short side. It's only out on PC for now, but there's always a chance it'll go multi-platform down the road. And I'm going to throw these two together here because both Valorant and Modern Warfare 3 seem to be making some moves this week. Firstly, Valorant looks to be coming to the PS5 and Xbox Series X and S this Friday, July 26th. This video will be live a day before that, so if the rumor turns out to be false, rip. Secondly, Modern Warfare 3 is launching on Game Pass this Wednesday, so fans who haven't checked it out yet can get their fix starting now if you're watching this. We've got some quick industry news this week, and this first story has the potential to actually be a big deal. SAG-AFTRA, if you don't know, is the Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, and functions as a union for voice actors and actresses in the gaming world. This Saturday, the SAG-AFTRA board voted unanimously to authorize a strike against video game companies. The strike has not started, but the potential for one now is very, very real. Without getting into too much of the nitty-gritty, the breakdown in negotiations centers around AI and its potential use in video games and just how voice actors and actresses will fit into this new world we've created, while also protecting their rights to their own voices. And wow, that's just wild. I can't believe I typed and had to read a sentence talking about protecting their voices. The future is now, eh? There are 10 companies potentially facing a strike, and there are some big players on this list. Activision, Blindlight, Disney Character Voices, EA, Epic Games, Formos Interactive, Insomniac Games, Take-Two Productions, VoiceWork Productions, WB Games. Of those named, only 3 of them may be unfamiliar to you, and they are Blindlight, Formos Interactive, and VoiceWork Productions, and they're all companies that provide production support in various capacities to various companies. Meaning, if the strike actually happens, a lot of our beloved voice actors and actresses will no longer be recording audio for our favorite games, at least until the strike is over. I will monitor this and keep you apprised of the situation as it develops. Next up is EA. Oh God, you know there won't be anything positive following this sentence. Okay, let's get it over with. This week, the behemoth announced that 2.2 million players have gained early access to College Football 25, and since the only way to get that early access was to buy the $100 deluxe edition, yeah, that is a lot of people who dropped 30 extra bucks for the early access. Furthermore, around 600,000 people played through EA Play, EA's subscription service. Of course, part of the hype comes from the fact that this is the first EA college football game since 2013, so clearly people are excited. It should also be noted that this is the first game that college athletes will be paid for if their likeness appears in-game. Well, okay, that wasn't too awful, but what's this? What do we have here? I knew EA wouldn't let us down. The review bombing campaign against Apex Legends' greedy battle pass scheme continues this week unabated. And yeah, just look at this. Oof. EA is still trucking along though, no signs that they will be changing their stance on this. In fact, this doesn't seem to have registered with EA at all because they announced yet a new level of monetization for College Football 25 because that 2.2 million in sales wasn't enough. No specific pricing information on the scheme, but don't worry, Ultimate Team Design Director Richard Waltz told VG247 that there will be nothing in the paid tier that can't be earned in the free tier. Naturally, he omitted the part where you must sacrifice weeks of your life to the RNG gods, but that's that. I don't play sports ball video games, but you guys are wild. The amount of money you spend on MTX is out of this world. To each his own, I guess. But speaking of review bombing, it seems we, and I mean we as the general population of gamers, have the suits slightly afraid for the time being anyway. Take-Two this week shared some concern with their investors about the risks of potential harm from review bombing. Here's a quote from Game World Observer highlighting Take-Two's fears. In addition, we may be subject to negative review campaigns or defamation campaigns intended to harm our ratings. Take-Two noted that this may lead to loss of players and revenues, additional advertising and marketing costs, and reputation harm. Translation: we may make some really dumbass decisions in the name of making money that may actually lose us money. Our bad. Alright, moving on to Ubisoft. What do you got for us this week? Ah yes, more money stuff. Ubisoft released its first quarterly earnings this year, reporting $315 million in net bookings, bringing the company up 8.3% year over year. Ubisoft cited XDefiant's launch, Rainbow Six Siege, and Assassin's Creed Shadows pre-orders as standouts for the quarter. So, good for them, I suppose. Line go up. Woo. Of course, the elephant in the room is the drama surrounding Assassin's Creed Shadows, to which Ubisoft has apologized for this week without, of course, acknowledging any specific wrongdoing. You can pause and check out this apology if you'd like, but it's just a bog-standard corporate PR move, nothing of substance. All in all, the situation is a mess, and if you're like me, you're tired of hearing about it, so let's move on. NetherRealm have reportedly laid off their mobile team, which could be up to as many 50 people shoved out the door. This closure means that Mortal Kombat Onslaught, just a year old at this point, will be ended by this October. Here's to hoping the displaced devs find their way somewhere better. Moving right along, Sega won a lawsuit against an online jerk who harassed one of their employees on social media. The individual in question has been ordered to pay an undisclosed sum in damages, as well as having to delete their posts. Here's a bit of a head scratcher for you. Warner Brothers Games acquired Player First Games this week, the devs behind Multiverses, the free-to-play platform fighter. Not a lot to report on here aside from the news itself, but this is a weird one because as far as I can tell, Multiverses is a pretty mid game. Not great, not bad, just kind of alright. So why Warner Brothers of all companies would want Player First Games as an odd one? Furthermore, what on earth are Player First Games thinking? Have you guys not seen what Warner Brothers does to its studios, especially recently? And yeah, of course, that's a rhetorical question. Player First Games founders were thinking, money, I want money. So good for them on the payday, I suppose. I hope you don't regret it. Godspeed, devs. So for this last one, I'm not going to go into any detail. You'll see why in a moment. So just consider this more of a PSA rather than a news story. For those of you raising little ones, and maybe not so little ones, Bloomberg released a piece this week discussing Roblox's predator problem. Yes, those kinds of predators. I don't want to be any more specific because the YouTube algo is very aggressive sometimes, and I'm a very small channel that can easily get squashed. So I'm going to leave the link down below. Please take a look at it and make sure to teach your young ones to stay safe online. If you're new to the channel, I like to wrap everything up each week with some cool, weird, or just plain funny stuff that I found this week, starting with the Fallout TV show, which has received 16 Emmy nominations and is reported to be ahead of schedule for Season 2. I haven't watched it yet, but I guess I really need to make time for it, hey. On the other hand, the Halo TV show was canceled this week, so bad news for fans of the show, sucks to hear. I, however, watched the first 6 or 7 episodes from Season 1 before ducking out myself. Not my cup of tea. But if tea isn't your thing either, how about a cup of coffee from Café LeBlanc? Or more accurately, from Jade City Foods, who is partnering with Altus for a run of Persona 5 coffees. For a time, you'll be able to grab some Café LeBlanc Dark Roast, Phantom Thieves of the Heart's Medium Roast, or a Shujin Academy Light Roast. Or perhaps you're more into some hot sauces, which definitely harken back to Café LeBlanc's curries. Personally, I've become a coffee guy in the last year or so, so it's tempting to try the coffees out. If you do, let me know how they are. Hey everyone, if you made it this far, you rock, thanks so much. The YouTube algo really enjoys it when people watch videos all the way through, so just by doing this, you're supporting me more than you may know, so again, thanks so much. Also, thanks for all the new channel subs. Suffice to say, I have been more than a little shocked at how well received my Space Marine 2 video was. You guys are highly motivating. So look forward to more Everything We Knows, more news, and even some more gaming content that I have in the works. As always, thanks for hanging out. I hope you have a great day. Stay safe out there. See ya.